Righty-o, gents.
Righty-o.
Right, we'll break into it.
Let's go.
How we doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
The greatest news team has reunited once again.
Yes.
We're back.
And once again, Brian hasn't made the effort, but his choice to leave a stain on your shoulder.
Well, I'm delighted to be part of the crew that is normally James Hempton and Dan Campion, because you've had so many podcasts on your podcast.
Numero 6, James.
Well, I have to say, Dan's number 6. I think, Brian, this will be number 3 for yourself. So.
Boom. So halfway.
He's getting there.
Halfway.
You're trying hard.
He's getting there.
I'm expecting a few more for myself, James, you next year.
There will be. There'll be a few more requests put in, but on today's...
Where are you going to record them, lads?
Probably here, I'd say.
Probably here is right, Dan. The greatest podcast studio in Ireland.
In the world.
In the world, sorry. In the world. In the world. But on today's episode, what I'm looking to discuss is Stoicism. Because I think it's definitely philosophy we can all relate to and have probably applied many, many lessons into our own lives. And of course, we did see a certain man 2 weeks ago to this day. I think it's 2 weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it was actually.
Friday 2 weeks ago.
Beautiful dinner in Hawksmoor before as well.
Oh, I've made so many recommendations for that restaurant. Jamesy, great
Unreal.
shout.
What a show.
Actually, we won't say where we moved from because that wouldn't be nice, but unbelievable food. And I'd
Class.
be picky enough like with steaks and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Not that I'm a snob or anything like that, but like I'd be really like,
like
yeah,
a
they
good
were fine.
steak.
I do like a good steak.
What did you
My
get, Dan?
goodness.
We got the same thing.
Very simple. Sirloin steak with beef dripping fries. But I also, because Brian's only a child, I ate half of the share platter that you got
You
with
didn't
Scott,
eat
right?
my share platter. I get
Oh,
more
sorry.
of
So
my
Brian's
share
a big
platter.
lad. I must have eaten Scott's stuff.
Beef
but,
tallow fries, unbelievable.
unreal.
Unbelievable.
Everything was
The
unreal.
lads were getting bone marrow, pork belly, a few bits of steak and stuff.
Bone marrow is a weird one.
Weird texture.
The texture is
Yeah.
so bizarre.
I think I'm more into the potential
health benefits of it.
or nutritional density
Yeah,
of
yeah,
bone marrow. And
yeah.
I was like, oh, this is delicious. Like eating liver. Oh, yeah, it's really good. In my head, I'm like, yeah, it's good for you. Just get it down.
Just get it done.
Yeah.
But
Very tasty though.
yeah, that's where we started the night anyway. And then we crossed over the bridge to go and see Mr. Ryan Holiday, who was doing a talk on Stoicism. What else would he be talking about?
Politics, maybe? I don't know. Just a wild fucking guess.
Whoa!
Jesus.
Sorry, Dan. Sorry, I was going to say politics was mentioned as well. We will get into that, though. We will get into that. I think the best place to start, because if someone maybe does know about Stoicism or doesn't know about Stoicism, there's 4 cardinal virtues. And they consist of, you can all chip in here just in case I forget.
Discipline. That's my one done.
Courage,
Temperance.
temperance, and wisdom.
Wisdom.
So we're going to dive into them to start off. I suppose the best place to always start, because I think it's a very masculine thing, Dan, isn't it? Discipline. I think every man wants to consider himself disciplined and act in that way. Because discipline is like self-control. It's having control of yourself. I think it's a very masculine thing to have it. How would you demonstrate discipline in your own life, Dan? And do you find it hard as well?
Discipline. I'm fascinated by discipline. Very interested by the topic of discipline because when we think about discipline, or it comes up in normal conversation with civilians, let's call them people who aren't really into the Stoic philosophy like we are. When it comes up around a dinner table or in a group, this might not be like a hot topic for people. You think of discipline as like self-flagellation and having to stay disciplined after Christmas, or I'm disciplined staying off the drink, or that it's a really, really hard thing. And I have a couple of thoughts on discipline. The first time I actually started to think about it was Jocko Willink, actually. And he would talk about discipline is freedom, and I didn't get that at the start. And probably through the business is the best way I've learned this, because I would have been fairly quote unquote disciplined with my training all through my life because I was part of a football team, and it was formal training and stuff. But I was always very regimented. I always did what was required. I always went to the cone. I always never cut the corner or whatever. And I would have thought of that as discipline. But the form of discipline that I was thinking about when Jocko was talking about it was systems, having the discipline to stick to the systems that you build for yourself. So it's not just this abstract feeling, this thing you have to have. I'm like, where the fuck do you find discipline? What is it? What food do you eat to get discipline?
Yeah.
But it was actually something you could build for yourself. And it was actually by making things a little bit easier for yourself, by building systems and removing friction, you could be more disciplined. So you could find ways to help yourself be more disciplined, just like motivation, this idea of motivation. I found it similar to that. So it was Jocko, listening to Jocko talk about by building a level of discipline and by developing the scale of discipline, you could have a more free life. I was like, oh, that's an interesting way of looking at this. So now it's no longer this hard thing I have to do, but it's like an intellectual thing I can design or create.
Yeah.
And that helps me be more disciplined. So people sometimes say to me, geez, you're so disciplined with your food, disciplined with your training. I was like, I'm not at all.
Well, I think it's also just the standard you hold yourself to.
Standards,
But like, do you want to be disciplined or do you want to be ill-disciplined, where you're a slave to every emotion and urge and you just give in to everything? You get nothing done as well. Like, if you're not disciplined, you just don't demonstrate any control over your own life, and you basically don't achieve all that much, because the most disciplined people achieve a lot in life.
Yeah. I think a first step, if I'm to be more kind of practical about it, a first step is to decide what your standards are, to make it conscious. Because if it's not conscious, it's very hard to be disciplined. If you're reactive, if you're just going with how you feel all the time, I'm not saying don't listen to your feelings, but if you wake up in the morning, you're like, I don't feel like getting out of bed, and you don't get out of bed, you're a slave to your emotions. You're a slave to how you feel. And that is a recipe for absolute disaster, as most of us know. Whereas if you decide, I would like to be the type of person who gets out of bed at 7 o'clock or 5 o'clock or whatever that is, you decide that first. You have to make it conscious.
Yeah.
You can write it down if you want. And then that's your standard. So yeah, you have to set your standard. And then the discipline is being able to hold yourself to that standard, I think. But you can make it easy for yourself. You can leave your phone on the other side of the room, so you kind of have to get out of bed. So that's a way you can...
That's a win.
You can help yourself with your discipline. Like Conor O'Keefe would often talk about going like from early morning runs at 5 o'clock, but he'd leave all his simple things, leave all his gym gear ready. So there's no excuse that you can make for yourself. You're making it easier to stick to the standards. Yeah. That's discipline. It's not this weird, oh, you're so disciplined, James. Jeez, you do your work. You have a system that helps you do the things you want to do. But before you can even build a system, you need to know who you want to be.
And what you want to do. It's demonstration of self-control.
Yeah.
That's how I view discipline as. Are you in control of yourself or not? And even just the simple examples you gave, having your phone across the room, get up in the morning, because you have to get up and then walk across. I think, I hear so many people talk about being on their phone in the morning. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, your attention is a currency. And if you're spending on this device that's sapping your dopamine out of your body, you'll achieve absolutely nothing. That's the greatest demonstration of being ill-disciplined. But discipline and self-control, I think, is a necessity. How would you view it, Mr. O'Loughlin? Discipline.
I have a few ideas in my head, but you already mentioned it, which I think is a big one. The idea of discipline being a skill. Because in my 20s, I would have said I wasn't a disciplined person.
At all?
No, I was, again, in some domains, as Dan mentioned there, but I would have berated myself because in certain aspects of my life, I wasn't being very, quote-unquote, disciplined. But I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the skill. So the things you mentioned there, I believe, are different tools and skills to kind of get there. But if you just use that reframe as a skill, it means we can all improve. I think that's just huge, because that's what's changed in my life when it comes to this. And you're talking about Jocko there and different ways of doing it. And I'm the exact same as Dan. People think I'm really disciplined. Like, I'm not all the time. But this is another aspect of discipline I think is really important. The consistency of the discipline. So you don't have to be 100% all the time. Yeah. If you can be a 6 or a 7 out of 10 for 45 weeks of the year, you'll change your life.
And what would that look like?
For example, training. Like, so obviously you help people to get fit or whatever. Strength train twice a week. Strength train 3 times a week.
Just don't miss a week.
But do no more.
Yeah.
You don't have to train 5 times a week. You don't have to do everything. You just have to do something consistently, because once that's done, there's consistency, there's momentum, and then you build on top of that.
Yeah.
But let's just go back to the idea of discipline being a skill. So I had the ignorance in my 20s of I'm not disciplined, therefore I can't be. But I realize now I just didn't have the skills. And what I've done is invest myself, have conversations, learn, and go, okay, I now have the skill of discipline. So even when I'm not disciplined, I can look at that, reflect, and go, okay, I can get better next week because I have the skill of how to get better at doing the thing I did not do.
Yeah. And do you need to practice for that to become reality, to become a disciplined individual?
Yeah, I think you just have to have an openness to try and an openness to not be disciplined all the time. As in, don't berate yourself when you don't do the thing that you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Like you're saying there, like, I get up most mornings like 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I'd say like 6 times out of 7 times a week, I'll do it, or I'll do it for 2 or 3 weeks straight. Sometimes I won't do it. And that's fine in that moment. I didn't do the thing I wanted to do. I can do it tomorrow. So like,
and I think that is actually a form of discipline in itself, weirdly enough, because I think if you're kind of like you're not berating yourself, but you don't have to have the same, morning routine or same structure all the time. You can be kind of loose and still get the thing done, because you're not getting up and not progressing yourself. How I view it as well is like, a disciplined individual is tapping into his higher self, Dan.
James is off. He's off in the other dimension now.
You mentioned this because we talked about this on your podcast before. The higher self is brilliant because I think you have a level of awareness that a lot of people don't have. So I think that's the issue people have. You talk about like, where are you going and what are you trying to achieve? Because it's all well and good saying I have to be disciplined. But who is your higher self? What do you want to achieve? What does that look like in a week?
Comes back to that awareness piece, yeah.
Yeah.
And just interesting, you mentioned that there about like not doing it every single day. the Jocko thing goes there as well. Like, because you are disciplined, you can now have the freedom to be able to not get out of it. It gives you that ability to do that because you're disciplined with your diet. You have the freedom to have the things that you like.
Yeah.
Because for most of the time, you have that level of discipline. So again, it doesn't mean self-flagellation and having to be.
That's what
100%.
I thought in my 20s. I thought discipline meant you were disciplined all the time.
And it was hardship.
But I can't do that. That's not realistic for me. Yeah, and it was hard. Again, because you have to fucking whip yourself. You have to whip yourself. Yeah.
I keep saying this. Discipline is a form of self-love. When you're disciplined, you take care of yourself. Yeah. And like, even, like you said, Dan, you touched on Jocko there, like, you're disciplined, but then because you're so disciplined, there's room for flexibility in what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just before we got going, Dan, you had a little timeout. No one's judging, Dan.
Just a little timeout by myself in the corner, like, just sit down.
Timeout chocolate.
No, it's banana. That's all it was.
Banana. But the thing is, like, I know, just by looking at you, you're a disciplined guy, you take care of yourself, you eat right, whatever, 95% of the time. You've got that flexibility then to be like, I'll have this. It's not all the time you're giving into an urge or like giving into temptation. Temptation's a big one.
Can I just go back to what you said there, James? Because it's true. Scott Peck's book, A Road Less Travelled, says about loving yourself and how that you need to love yourself in order to love others. And then for your children, you need to be self-disciplined in order to show them how to be self-disciplined.
Yeah.
So you don't tell them, you do it. And you're saying there, self-discipline is a form of self-love. So he would say the same thing.
Yeah.
And I would agree. Because again, go back to this kind of starting point we mentioned there of the awareness. In my 20s, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I am. I did, as a man, and what I want to achieve, and I know myself more now. So it's easier to be disciplined or get the skill of discipline because I understand myself. I love myself. I know what I want to do.
Yeah.
So I think it's a process. You have to give yourself a chance to get better and know that it's a skill. So you're not going to be very good to start, but keep practicing. Eventually it becomes
and
better.
it compounds over time. Like, the more discipline you get in other domains, I feel like you can apply it to different areas of your life. It normally starts with kind of the physical body. Then you work on your mind a bit more. And then you work on maybe what you're spending your, attention on. And then you can apply it to, if you're disciplined in all these other domains, apply it to a financial sense, a spiritual sense. You become disciplined in multiple domains. But I just think it's complete another demonstration the whole time of self-control. Are you in command or are you asleep at the wheel? Are you conscious about what you're doing or you're unconscious?
Well, we've had this conversation before because the big thing for you always mention the importance of discipline as a man. So what's your thoughts on that? Of why is it so important as a man to be disciplined?
I'll probably keep relating to it, but I think it's just that demonstration of self-control is a masculine essence. It's a masculine way to be. Imagine that you weren't disciplined. I just think the complete opposite. And like, I just feel like you can't achieve all that much if you cannot apply yourself and focus and just have that control of your body and mind to do what needs to be done to help you progress. I think life is all about like fulfilling the potential that you have inside. And I think discipline is like that foundation layer for that to go on and happen. Because without that discipline, what's there?
You think it's almost a starting point, though?
It is. It is. When you become disciplined, I think just if you can master your body first off and just get that, because I think it all starts with the food you put in your mouth. If you can't have control over what you eat, you're going to fall off completely. That's step one. If you can't control your actions to get to the gym, to sit down and read a book, to prepare for a podcast.
I didn't prepare for this podcast. That's what James is alluding to.
I'm just about prepared for that. But like the simple tasks of just like, can you get yourself to do a certain thing? Can you control yourself? Because if you can't do that, I don't think you can achieve all that much.
Yeah.
And everything's a temptation as well.
There's lots of temptation. I think I'm going to speak as a man about what I understand as a man as an experience.
Not a woman, Dan.
Let me just add the context here. This does not mean that what I say is excluding women. I'm just speaking as a man. I know that as a man, we have huge potential for good and evil. Let's just use those words. I'm not talking about like this magical idea of good and evil, but we could do incredible things. We have insane amount of drive and aggression and energy and motivation.
Like Genghis Khan and energy inside
so
us.
we have that Genghis just brewing to come out. And I think the discipline you're talking about, harnessing that is really necessary for us as men, because if we don't, it comes out in other ways. And this is what I talk about sometimes. I remember I talked about this with a couple of people, especially with Renoch O'Leary, about men who commit these types of crimes against women or vulnerable people and all this kind of stuff. It's very stark in these situations. And a lot of the time, this toxic masculinity conversation comes up around those type of men. And for me, they're men who have not learned to harness the energy of being a man, the physical capability we have. We are stronger than people who are vulnerable and smaller than us. We have great physical capability. We have great capability with our mind to focus on a task and to build and to grow. And if we don't learn how to harness that, it's going to come out in other ways, and we're going to prey on people who are weaker than us because we didn't have the discipline to understand what this was and to harness that. I often think of that Peterson line, be the lion, but learn how to revert to the lamb or something like that. Like, understand the power and train the power, become stronger and more competitive and competent and driven, but understand that they are tools you're honing for a specific realm, and understand how to come back to being kind and compassionate and be disciplined enough. Be disciplined enough to carry around a loaded gun and not to use it except in defense of other people or whatever. So yeah, I think what you're saying there about that masculinity and all that energy that needs to be harnessed, I think the discipline conversation around that is really, really useful as men. And mastering your body is a huge part of that, because we have this physical need to move and fight and do all these different things, and that can go either way. But for us to train that, what's the line? You'll know the line. Which one of the Stoic philosophers talks about mastering the body so we can tame the mind? Epictetus, yeah. So like
treat the body rigorously so it's not disobedient to the mind.
Beautiful, James. You swear this guy read some quotes before he came on this podcast here. But that idea of, like, and you said it there, starting with the physical domain and getting in good shape, because when you're not in good shape, and it doesn't mean you have to be fucking rocking a six-pack and massive arms or anything like that. It's not that type of good shape.
It's stressing the body.
It's stressing and challenging the body and developing those physical attributes so that you don't fall into depression or anxiety or sluggishness or brain fog or all these different states that cause you to make bad decisions. And starting with the body is a great place to learn that. And like, even training the body, you need to learn discipline to train the body, because it's fucking difficult. You're at mile 2 and you're struggling. You learn the discipline to get to mile 3. You're lifting and you want to overload the body and you're on that last rep and you can't lift it, you can't move it, and you're going to push through. You learn skills. You learn, I'm capable of this. And then as well as that, you learn, wow, I lifted that. So you develop a level of confidence in yourself that comes from that. So all these different skills I would class in what you just described as discipline there. But I think as men, and I'll speak as men, I'm not saying this doesn't apply to women. Oh, fucking context all over the place now on the internet. But I think as men, it's really, really, really important that we
And it's attractive, Dan. A guy that's disciplined, that has self-control, is a very attractive man. Like, if he can get himself to the gym, eat the right foods, and work on his mindset, I think it's an attractive quality that you want to have in a partner. And
it's attractive to other men as well. It's to be around a man who's displaying, you're like, oh, this guy.
No, I know.
I need to be careful the tone of my ew here.
He's competent, he's capable, and therefore I want that.
That's inspiring to me. Yeah.
As Dan was talking there, because what's bringing up for me, because I asked you, James, about what's discipline mean as a man. A man and a boy keep coming into my head. What is a boy? A boy is not disciplined. A boy is shirking into immaturity. A boy is not leaning into the harshness, the resistance of life.
Commit to
exactly. Whereas a man understands, particularly as you know, Dan, as a father, that despite the difficulty of life, despite the resistance, you've got to lead. You've got to lean in, even if you don't have the answer, with a knowing that I can learn, I can develop, I can adapt to whatever the situation is. And I think it was Gary McGowan said on my podcast regarding he remembers a day when he was in the gym and he equated that, Jesus, I'm in the gym over the last few months and I'm getting stronger and stronger and stronger just through this discipline. And I can bring this to my studies. I can bring this to any aspect of my life. So there's that foundational principle of discipline is so necessary to be competent, or again, to lean into any resistance in life.
And I like what you said there, Brian, like you apply it to the physical realm and then you apply it to other domains as well. Like, it's not just discipline physically, it's like, where can I add this? Studying, financial, spiritual, whatever it might be. Just having and demonstrating self-control. And I had to apply some self-discipline recently, right? This is going to be a bit of a mad story, but I want to get off my chest anyway, because it was temptation that came across me recently, right? So, as you know, Dan, and as everyone knows, people online, when you're posting and you're doing well for yourself, people are naturally attracted to you. You might get a bit of female attention as well. You might get people.
Really? Do you guys get female attention on the internet? I get no female attention. I get all the bros.
All the bros. Anyway, I had something happen recently, right? So a girl I've seen in the past, it finished. She blocked me in the end. Not in a bad terms, just wanted her own space. Fair enough. She reached out recently. She was like, "Oh, what's up?" I was like, "Why did she text me back?" So I only replied to her, and she's like, "Oh, listen." As she went on, she had a free house, and I was away at the time anyway. And she was telling me this, and she's like, "Yeah." I was like, "What, do you want me to call around for tea or something?" I was like, "What's going on?" Anyway, she offered for me to come around, And I was thinking in my head, I'd have probably a great time drinking tea and whatever else might happen. But then I was thinking, before we got going, I was digressing down and just recently seeing someone, who knows, we'll go somewhere. The following day, I was going to meet up with her, and I think in the back of my mind, I was like, I can't do this. Like, I'd be conscious of it, being with someone and then going and meeting someone else. And with that temptation, I had to control myself, which, I could give in to the pleasure of having that instant gratification of being with someone but not necessarily caring about them. And that was a demonstration to myself of trying to be, not trying, should I say, of being disciplined, because we're always going to be faced with the temptation of instant gratification, pleasure and everything else that goes with it. But can you hone your own self-control and power to be like, no, it's actually not worth it? And that comes not just in a sexual sense, but it comes in many other forms as well.
Can I ask a question?
Go for it, Dan.
What was the story you were telling yourself about why it would have been bad to go and have a couple of berries with that girl? Like what's the story? If I do this, this is what it represents to me as a person. Your own story, because no one would have known.
No one would have known. And that's the thing, Dan. No one would have known, but the only person that would have known was me. So I was conscious of it. And I was like, having that cup of tea, it's a bit more shallow. There's not depth to it. With this other girl that I'm seeing at the moment, there's more depth to it. I like her a bit more. I'm more into her. And I was thinking in my own head, like, it just wouldn't sit right with me. Like, if I had done it, and some element of discipline, but if I had done it, it was like in the back of my head. And I'd be like, it's a form of, not even betrayal. I wouldn't say that, but it's like...
Well, do you know what? Sorry, can I just quickly cut in there? I think it's a form of betrayal to you as a man. You would have known, right? So there's a level, again, you got good awareness. You have a level of integrity that you want to have as a man. And what we do with discipline, we cast that vote for the man we want to be. So no one would have fucking known, but you know.
I would have known.
And I think that influences your life, because you're full of shit.
Yeah.
You're lying to your fucking self. And I'll go back to what I talked about. That's a different decision you made of a boy and a man. There's a maturity there that discipline instills in you and gives you something that you don't know what it is until you fucking feel it.
Yeah, and that's it.
That's
and
class.
like that fucking decision, I was mulling over it, and I was playing the devil's on the shoulders. Like, you go around knowing to know. Yeah. Knowing to know. But then I was thinking, to be in the presence of the girl the following day, the girl that I'm into, I was like, it just didn't sit right with me. But I had to harness self-discipline. I had to harness a bit of discipline not to do it, which is, but that's temptations come in many forms, and they pop up daily. So just be aware of them, because...
Well, this is like back to what we said at the start. You had a standard set for yourself. If you didn't, that conversation wouldn't have even been a conversation for you.
Yeah.
And to have that standard, you had to have a level of awareness around it.
Yeah.
And then a level of awareness around what this means, what this temptation is, to actually recognize it for what it is. And again, it's funny, we're talking a fucking code here and all that, but it's funny, like somebody could look at that situation and say there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and that's fine, because that's your standard. But I think it is about identifying for yourself, I want to be this. I like that. That's not Brian original, isn't it? Cast a vote for the man you want to be.
And now I've heard that loads of places.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a nice one. But you kind of, I think that the deciding, I want to be this type of person, and if I make this decision, I'm not being this type of person. And
also, because you mentioned it earlier on, discipline compounds. So you would have known, if I don't make this decision, it's going to have an impact in the future. And a small little decision, again, that no one would know, can compound in the rest of your life again over time.
They add up. Yeah. They add up. And they create the character of your person. Like, every decision that you make, it wouldn't have sat right with me. But anyway, look, that's...
And maybe you would have woken up in an ice full of bath missing a kidney. So
I mean, also, I at your age, being single, I don't know if I would have had the discipline myself personally to make that decision. So fair play to you.
Thank you.
I would have rode her. Sorry, can move on.
And then had the cup of tea after.
We're talking about tea here, lads.
Sorry.
Keep it clean, please.
Just to finish up on discipline, of just a definition and then the practice of an example and a quote. Okay. And then we just little quote. Definition anyway: self-control, moderation, and the ability to master desires and impulses to live in harmony with nature.
Can I ask a question before James goes any further? What do you think about desires and impulses?
In what sense?
In any sense that you like. What do you think about desires and impulses?
I keep falling back to this idea of boyism. Number one, I think they're always there. You never get rid of them. So the idea of discipline, I think, is really important, because it's something you're always working on. You never have it sussed. Desires and impulses rule us all to some degree. And I think as you mature, as you age, as you get more quote-unquote disciplined, I think you build more awareness around what's kind of ruling you, I would say, in terms of desires and impulses. But to some degree, they still rule me. I think they always will. I think you chip away for the rest of your life at that, is what I think.
Yeah, good. I think desires are important to have in life. Like if you want to desire a better life for yourself or you want to create something, I think desires have their place. Urges, I think, are an issue because as men, as we all know, we're probably thinking about sex the whole time. It's just a natural way of being. To give into them urges can cause a lot of, harm and, just not end well. So desires have their place and urges, I wouldn't say do.
Yeah, interesting take on this. I think about this sometimes because we're obviously talking about sex here. The impulse and the urge to have sex is a natural drive, as is the impulse to conquer and dominate and fight. I think it's our interpretation of that is important. I don't think there's a problem with desire. I desire my partner. I desire to be a good father. And then I have impulses to eat a good steak.
Yeah.
But I think if I'm ruled by those, which you said is a problem, and if I'm have a poor interpretation about what they mean, I think that's a problem. But I think like those things are natural because sometimes we demonize those urges, and a lot of time as men, I speak as a man, as men we get a lot of pushback and a lot of hate for having these impulses,
which is complete.
And
it's their nature.
There's a shame around it,
Yeah.
And then we can get very resentful, and then the communication around that can be really, really poor. But I think the desire and the impulse is normal, and if you feel it's abnormal or that's probably something to have a conversation around because sometimes we can have like an unhealthy impulse to have a drink or an unhealthy impulse to eat more than we should.
Yeah.
So it's understanding at what level. Do I feel this is okay for me as a person who's decided I want to be this type of person? For example, with eating, I have decided I want to be someone who's in shape. I have a massive impulse to eat another one of those little timeout cookies, which I did have. But I understand that that's just an impulse and I can manage that. And I'm okay with that because that's the type of person I want to be. And if that's not something that's important to me, I'll have the fucking timeout and that's fine too. But it's about deciding that, okay, I'm going to have these urges and impulses. Now, for me, there's another layer then. In the modern world we live in, those things are fucking hacked, like they're supercharged. So like we have this phone, which is basically every impulse that we have multiplied by a million.
But I think that's really important. Where I was getting at is the idea is that if these impulses do end up hacking you, they end up ruling you.
Yeah.
So if you're not a disciplined person, you're not living a life of intention. And I think that's an issue. So that doesn't mean that life's going to go easy or you're going to get everything right. But at least if it goes wrong, I lived with intention. I moved into the space that's the best I could. And if I'm ruled by the phone or any distraction or any impulse, that's not me. That's nature. That's just fucking happening. And I'm like, what the fuck happened there?
And isn't that the core of Stoicism, really? They talk about distance, not letting yourself emotions rule you, but let's just insert emotions, impulses, desires, whatever. If you can't have a buffer to have the experience, take a minute and make a decision, then you're not in control.
And what's in your control is to put the phone down as opposed to allow yourself to be consumed by doom scrolling.
Exactly.
A choice is there. I will be doom scrolling. I know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
What's in my control?
Put it down. And in your situation, I want to have this cup of tea. That's a normal impulse. That's okay to think about that, to have the thought. But my decision is I'm not going to have the cup of tea because it's not in line with who I want to be.
That's mad because I have at least 4 or 5 cups of tea a day. Just have the cup of tea.
You look like the kind of fellow with 4 or 5 cups of tea a day.
Have a cup of tea,
Have a cup of tea. Actually enjoying a cup of tea here now.
Isn't it? That's actually a decent cup of tea.
Wait, I'm talking about a real cup of tea. What are you talking about?
Okay,
we'll move on.
We'll move on. So in practice, discipline, how it's practiced, this virtue teaches you to act rationally, avoid excess, and make decisions based on reason rather than passion or greed. That's a good one. Examples in daily life: avoiding overindulgence in food, drink, or material possessions, practicing restraint in emotional reactions such as anger or envy, prioritizing what truly matters rather than fleeting pleasures. And then the quote is here. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. Seneca.
Ooh, I had a moment today, actually. I'm proud of myself. I've been looking at trying to get wireless. I've been talking to you about getting wireless earbuds for probably a fucking year.
Yeah.
I don't need them. I have a set of wired headphones in my pocket right now. It's not the most modern thing in the world, but I'm like, I'd love a set of wireless earbuds. And fucking had a thing in Amazon. I'm going to save that link, and it's Black Friday today. I'm going to get on a Black Friday deal. Went down, it's only like 60 quid or something. I'm like, I don't need it.
Good man, Dan.
Fucking don't need that.
Good man.
That's
just save the money.
I'll just save the money. That's,
again,
that's
even
more important.
that impulse again, Black Friday, buy now, get it.
It's fucking banners and the whole thing is designed to hack me. And it was getting me in. I was like, I had it in my shopping cart, and literally last minute I was like, don't need this. I closed like 8 tabs of other things I was looking at. I was like, I actually don't need any of those things. I've been caught up in the emotion of the whole thing.
Self-control, Dan. That's a man.
I'm proud of myself for that today. That was a moment I had
I
today.
admire that as well because, like you mentioned earlier, Brian, that compounds. Other areas of your life, you start doing discipline acts, and it all adds up to.
I think that's an important maybe point to finish on. Is that like discipline in these really small things seem inconsequential in the moment, but they do have that compound effect, as you mentioned. They're much bigger than they seem, because this is life. Life are these small little things, day by day, minute by minute, and the space of 3 months, 6 months, 1 year.
I did 6 lines of cocaine afterwards, so like the big win for me was the earbuds.
Right, we're going to move on to courage. Courage being number 2. I'll throw out the definition, right? So it's the ability to face fear, pain, danger, or adversity with bravery and perseverance. I suppose I'll throw it your way, Dan. How would you demonstrate courage, or when or do you demonstrate courage? Courage is an interesting one. It's different.
Do I demonstrate courage? This is interesting. I have to think about this. One thing I love about this whole courage, bravery thing is it's not the absence of fear. That was a big one for me. It's like, why am I fucking afraid doing these things? Yeah. I noticed this first in any big events in football. Playing in a stadium or in front of people or whatever. No, it's playing in the stadium. A couple of club finals in Parnell Park and stuff. But I was like, I'm supposed to be brave, but I'm fucking terrified here. Why am I so afraid? And then hearing that line that it's fear is not the absence of bravery. It's being afraid and doing it anyway. Yeah. So like working through that fear as opposed to not having the fear. I was like,
and don't they say the one thing you can't fake is bravery?
Yeah.
Because
you're doing it.
You're still doing it. You're still doing it.
Yeah. So do you want to re-ask me the question? Because
I was going to ask, when or do you demonstrate courage in your life? I suppose, Dan, starting a business is courageous.
Well, can I just add, you have a think there, Dan, what you're going to say? Because I know we're going to talk about Ryan Holiday's event, but for the first 10 minutes, he was actually talking about courage. And maybe even a bit longer. I just remember the first 10 minutes. Yeah. Because it was very good. And Courage is Calling is actually one of my favorite books from Ryan Holiday, because courage, similar to you, it's like this idea when I was younger, I was like, I'm afraid and what's going on. And I've realized over the last 10 years of my life that I've been extremely courageous, and underlying that courage has been just pure fear, constantly, and stepping into it. So going back to the importance of discipline, I think it's very difficult to be disciplined without having that courage, because there's often times where the discipline requires you to do something new or step into something that you're not too sure if you can actually do. But again, having that courage, like I said, you're showing that courage by just acting on that thing and giving yourself license to get better, despite how quote unquote bad you might be. And then it's like anything, it's just a skill that keeps developing. And
is courage something you use a lot? For yourself, Brian?
I think so, yeah. I'll just go back to 2 things for me that pop out as an entrepreneur and a father, because there's constant newness. So, something might happen to Sailor and she's 5. She wasn't 5 last year. This thing never occurred before. So it's like, well, what do I do? Well, I don't know. I'm in this moment now. So let's just show some level of courage or bravery and go, what about this?
And do you notice the fear come upon you when it's
sometimes, or something might occur. But again, the responsibility is on me. Yeah. So despite me going like, I don't know what to do, it's like, okay,
step into it.
You have to. I'm the leader here. And then same with business, like things are happening even right now in my life where it's like, what's going to happen or whatever. And it's like, the unknown is always there. So it's like, what is the next step?
And how is your approach now to the unknown? Because you've stepped in so many times into fearful situations, and you've stepped up and you've done the thing. Has your concept of courage changed?
Yes, but it still requires that step. So again, the idea of like, I have to be brave or courage in this moment is still the next moment. The only difference is I've stepped into moments of the unknown with courage, and some of them have been very successful. Yeah. Whatever that looks like. So I at least have the experience of, I stepped into something I didn't think I could do, and I did it. So I do step into more courage with intention, but it still requires the courage. It still requires, I don't know what's going to happen here.
And do you like when that comes upon you? Like when it pops up now?
Yes and no. But I definitely want to accept it more. So again, I have more experience. I have a bit more maturity. I'm clear of who I am. So I definitely want to accept it. I definitely step into more courage because I want to. But it's still difficult.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah, when fear comes up, I heard a great quote actually from Maslow. We step forward into growth, or we step back into, you basically step back into fear. So you're always in that kind of pendulum of where will you go? And that's when, I suppose, when fear comes around, the courageous act is to step forward and not go back to doing what you've always done and just staying comfortable.
Sometimes
you can avoid.
Sometimes the courage that could be about stepping back as well, though. So I think it's important. But I get what that analogy is, like stepping into the unknown or something, or the fear that's trying to consume you. Yeah. But I do think sometimes stepping back can be just as difficult and courageous for some people.
It can be.
Because again,
but once you step forward, I think you like, it's not always good. You know what I mean? Yeah, because you've done it over and over again, now you have the insight to say it's okay to step back at times. For yourself, Dan, courage.
Yeah, this is a hard one.
It is.
Think about this.
It actually is even hard to talk about. I'm trying to think of it.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of those things that are hard to talk about because if you talk about being courageous, it's very hard. I find. Let me talk about me specifically, not for other people. I find it's been very hard to think about me as a courageous person because I experience so much fear. It's hard to think about being courageous, and you'll get people telling you sometimes you're being very courageous. I'm like, there's people in fucking war zones. Yeah. There's people that go and do incredible things. That's courageous. But then I'm thinking they're also full of fear as well, and they're doing those things. And like, would I present it with a very challenging situation where there's loads of fear? Would I step forward or would I step back? So it's hard to answer that question. I will in a second. First of all, because you brought it up, I want to say you're really demonstrating to me a lot of courage at the moment. I don't want to be too cryptic on the podcast, and we're not going to share details of what's going on, but like you're going through a challenging time and you're stepping forward into the challenges. And it's you're expressing a lot of the fear that you're going through. So,
and isn't it just in my current situation? My back's kind of against the wall. And I think that's where courage is really important because sometimes you kind of have no choice but to be courageous. I think that is important for some people to kind of understand.
Yeah, well, you do have a choice now. You could just crumble and go a different direction with this and throw everything out. And like to maybe clarify what I mean by this, the reason I can identify courage is because you've expressed the fear. It's not just I'm like, oh, wow, Brian's doing this really brave thing. It's like you've expressed a huge amount of fear with this to me.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah,
and you're still doing it. So that's courage to me. I'm also thinking of. I'm trying to think of times in my life where I've demonstrated courage, and it's a hard thing, but like it is a hard thing because I don't think I've been a particularly courageous person. But if I'm thinking about it now, I think about like being on the podcast and being a bit more vulnerable on the podcast.
Yeah,
is
vulnerability. Actually,
that's a great show. Vulnerability.
I've been a lot more vulnerable over the last few years. And it's like I'm just fucking I'm tapping open that Pandora's box there now, but that was a lot of fear around that at the start of judgment and
have you noticed yourself grow because of that?
Massively. I did this. I told you I did this solo podcast yesterday, and I've just found myself talking about vulnerability, and that's a big thing for me because like I'm doing this in a public forum where I know it'll be judged. It's inevitable that it will be judged, and I'm afraid of being judged,
as we all are.
So I think maybe that's a bit of courage that I've demonstrated to myself. It's not like it's a courageous thing to do a podcast. Like, it's not what I'm saying. But for me, there's an area I can identify. I had a situation recently enough. I spoke to you about this and you about this with the podcast, and some stuff went on, and I had some decisions to make there that really conflicted me, and I was really put face to face with myself as, are you going to be a courageous person here? Yeah. And in the end, I made a decision. There was no right decision to make. In the end, I made a decision that I wasn't 100% happy with, but you actually helped me see a different perspective on this. Like, this is the right thing to do for the type of person you want to be or whatever. And again, I don't want to be, the listeners don't know what I'm referring to, and I don't be cryptic about it, but that was an opportunity of me being presented with two decisions that I could make, both which were difficult, and there was fear involved in both of them. And I could have made neither of them. I could have just sat there and done nothing about this particular situation, but I made a decision.
Which is a courageous act.
Which I think I felt afterwards really good about having made the decision. And I can point to previous times in my life where I would not make a decision and hope the situation goes away.
And that never happens.
And that doesn't happen. That comes back to bite me. Just like you with the decision you made about drinking the tea.
Yeah.
It's a decision that you make for yourself, because going forward you have the confidence to make more decisions then. So maybe that's a demonstration of courage, yeah. But like I've shared this before, like I've had a great support system in my life, so I don't feel like it's been a particularly, like people say, oh, so courageous to start a business. Maybe.
I think you're being a bit fucking...
Yeah,
that's
but like...
a bit not true like that. You made a decision that you had a job that you were being paid that was more certainty. You got away from something that, again, you weren't fulfilled in, fine, but you did... It's
I suppose I've too much... In my head, I'm trying to contextualize this too much against all of the people who have all of these really difficult decisions and situations in their life.
Which is ridiculous.
And my decision is like, oh, I have a comfortable situation here, and I'm going to go through a bit of discomfort to be able to do this thing that I want to do. Like, so in the grand scheme of things, to me, that's not particularly courageous. What's more courageous for me is these fundamental decisions I make about myself to change or to react in a certain way, or situations to not have an emotional reaction to something, even though I know it's justified. For me, that's how I show myself a little bit more courage, because I'm afraid of, and it's a lot of afraid of what people might think or people might say or what's going to happen in this situation, and making a decision anyway. To me, that's my version of courage, I think.
I love it.
Can I just get in there quickly? Because what you said there has popped something in my head. You said there about, like, in my head, I start questioning myself and all that, because in Courage is Calling, Ryan Holiday talks about the wolves. Did you ever read this? No? So he says about some story back in the 1400s, whatever it was. He always goes through stories about...
Can we fact check that? Was it the 1400s?
Yeah, whatever. But they're basically there's these two lads who are to some degree hunters or they're explorers, and they basically have to cross a forest. And they come to the start of the forest and they hear these wolves. And this is in Courage's calling. And basically, man goes, woo. And man goes, fuck, Jesus, we can't go in there, man. How many wolves are there? And they're like, other lad goes, yeah, you're right. There's probably about 20. And they're like, yeah, fuck that. We can't do that. So they're lamenting for a while. I don't know if it's a few hours or a few days, but eventually they pluck up the courage to go into the forest and explore to get on the other side. And what did they find? 2 wolves. And the idea with the
They
story...
were horribly massacred.
Yeah. 2 wolves that they got by and they made it to the other side. But the idea being, you mentioned there, but the psychological... they made up the story of 20 wolves. This thing is huge. It's going to consume me. We can't possibly move in here. When the reality was completely different. And again, you're talking there about the psychological element and who am I and can I do this and all this. So again, courage is calling in the sense of to step forth into the unknown. They didn't know, but yet they knew in their own head exactly what it was because again, you go to the negative or I have to be afraid.
And it's crazy what fear does to us. I think it literally paralyzes us. And it's always worse in our imagination. That's another Stoic quote. Like, it's always worse in imagination than it ever is in reality.
Isn't that the negative bias, which is natural as humans? We got to survive, so therefore we will do that. But again, go back to particularly the day and age we're living now. There are no wolves, certainly not fucking attacking us right now.
Yeah.
So that we know that negativity is going to come. We know that's hardwired as humans. So can we just stop and question that and go, is that true? Do I have to listen to that? You know, because I think that, again, go back to all this, that awareness at the start and go, okay, now can I actually fucking tell it to fuck off and lean in with courage?
Yeah, courage is something else. Especially when fear comes upon you. I think just step into it because I think just demonstrated by both your stories there, you grow so much because of it. When courage, you just build up that courage.
Well, what about you then? So, sorry, in terms of courage, like have you always been? Would you call yourself as courageous? Would you lean into it easily enough? Not what?
Maybe I've became more courageous. I'm trying to even think of demonstration of courage.
I'll offer you one if you'd like.
Go for it.
I think you're quite courageous in how you speak your mind. You very obviously have quite strong opinions on a lot of different topics, and you're not afraid to really express those opinions, despite the fact you probably get a little bit of pushback. Maybe you don't get it to your face, but like some of the topics around masculinity and stuff like that, you're very comfortable expressing that. And I don't think that comes through in ignorance of other people's opinions. I think you're aware that other people may not agree with you, and you're still comfortable speaking out, which nowadays is very rare. The courage to say something that might not be well received among the masses. I think that's quite brave.
Appreciate that. Yeah, maybe that's an element of it. Courage. I don't even think.
I would also agree with that, particularly for your age, I think, as well.
Particularly for age.
I think you understand yourself at a level that I think you're more courageous than you potentially give yourself credit for, because you're just like, I understand who I am and what I want. But there's a lot of courage in there, I think, for you to genuinely be you and lean in that, quote unquote, naturally.
Look what you're doing. Right now, you're doing this.
This just feels like a conversation, Dan. I don't overthink of what this is.
But it is a form of courage as well. This is you.
I agree.
You're hosting this, you're platforming this, you're sharing opinions, you're putting this information out there to be judged in the public domain. Yeah. That's courageous.
Yeah. I suppose one element of courage that I have maybe demonstrated to myself this year, it's all relating back to women at the moment, is
we love women.
We do love women. Overcoming approach anxiety. So being able to approach a woman is something I've leaned into this year.
Oh, I've got one. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
I've leaned into it because it takes a bit of courage, because a lot of guys suffer from this, and fear comes over them, just paralyzed, and they never even approach any women. But I had a friend of mine, he's a bit of a savant, and he was teaching me, different tips and tricks, to draw them in, or just actually have the courage and confidence to go up and speak to a woman. Women want to be approached. They want to be, adorned and given compliments. Maybe not too many compliments now, but just enough to keep them interested. But that took a bit of courage, because there's a lot of fear. I think all men understand when they see a beautiful woman, it takes a bit of fucking balls to go up and just introduce yourself or just say hello.
Every morning I wake up and see my miss.
That takes courage to
It takes courage to go over, because I'm like, come on, you're doing it so early. The reason I reacted like that, last week, I went into town with my dad and a good friend of mine, Scott. Actually, Ian was meant to come, but he was sick on the day. And we were doing a bit of street photography.
Nice.
And Scott was sharing some tactics with us for a street portraiture. So basically taking people's pictures on the street that you don't know. And we were sitting at a coffee table, and me and my dad would be quite a stoic character now as well, and absolute legend of a man. We were having a coffee, and Scott was, we were talking about how to ask someone to take their picture. And me and my dad were shitting ourselves, thinking of, Scott was like, you go up and just ask people, can I take a photograph of you? And we were in fucking Talbot Street, it's you're gonna get a rough ride in Talbot Street.
Yeah.
And we went out in the streets. It took about an hour and a half before I could literally just walk up to someone and say, "Can I take your picture?"
And this was all in your head at the conversation?
Completely in my head. Scott is very experienced at this, right? By the end of the day, I was actually quite proud of this. I had asked 10 people. I got 5 no's. People just said no. One person told me to fuck off.
Did it get easier to ask?
I got better at doing it. I don't think it got easier. I was still nervous doing it, but the story disappeared. The story I told myself after the first person I asked completely disappeared. I actually asked two women who were sitting with their shopping outside, and they were lovely. Like, hell you love. Yeah, go on. Take a picture there. And I was having a bit of banter. I was going on the front page of the Times, ladies. Yeah. And then after that one, it got easier. And I was asking this really rough looking character was sitting on a bin, and I asked him, and he would fuck off. And I was like, oh, I didn't die. Yeah. All of a sudden, that story I told myself was gone. Scott asked one person, and he's really experienced. And I asked him afterwards what's going on. He's like, it's just so tough every time I go out here because you have this whole idea in your head if this person's going to reject me, I'm going to be an absolute laughing stock. Everyone's going to turn around and point at me. It's like I was walking up and down the streets for an hour and a half before someone make eye contact with me. I drop my eyes straight away. I'm not like that in general.
I thought there was 20 wolves, Dan. It's only 2 wolves.
The whole street was filled with wolves, but it's interesting you bring that up because was a great exercise to go out and immediately break a narrative I had in my head after an hour and a half.
And how did you feel after?
By the time I got to the end of the day, I was walking with my dad. He had got inside his own head so bad. He couldn't do it. He was so inside his own head, and I was like that for the first hour and a half. And I just asked that first person. Man. And by the end of it, I was rocking up to people going, "What's the story? Do you mind if I take a picture?" And they go, "What?" I was like, and I was like, "Oh."
It's social fluidity. So when you've mastered it, you've became numb to rejection, and then you have the confidence. Once you can get 1 or 2, and even if they reject you, you're like,
I just realized getting punched in the face is okay. It's not that bad.
Do you know what's bringing up to me here when it comes to courage as well? Because I do this as much as I can, and I do try to lean in it, and I have done it my whole life. When I'm doing something new, you have to be the first person to do it or whatever. I want to be the first person because I know the longer I leave it, the tougher it's going to get. Yeah. So again, if I was there, I would be like, Scott, what do I have to do? And I'd do it. And I would almost look for the rejection so I can have the adaptation. The confidence. Because if I watch you do it and you get rejected, I'm like, look at that. This is so
That's
different.
what happened to my dad. He watched me get 1 or 2. He felt worse. Then he watched me get rejected and he's like, oh my God, this is terrible. And he couldn't see in my head. I was like, oh, actually, that wasn't that bad. It wasn't like, this is amazing.
You almost get a kick out of the rejection. It's like,
I didn't get a kick out of it.
Did you not? No.
No, but I realized I didn't die as well.
Yeah.
Which is like, I swear to God, sweating, elevated heart rate. This just absolute, like that is the same with approaching women or whatever like that. Just this story. Like, even if it's not approaching people, walking into a new room full of people, any of these situations where you're like, oh my, your body thinks you're going to die. 20 wolves. It's a great way of describing it. Not you, Brian Holiday. But yeah, that physical reaction to this story that you tell yourself, this association, which you can break by leaning through it and having that bit of courage. Because I was terrified and I did it. So there's another demonstration.
And you step forward into growth. Then.
These are funny things, like, because again, in my head, I'm like, yeah, but I'm not in a war zone. I went up and asked someone to take the picture.
No, but I think it's the joys of life then again, because again, you can use anything in life as that avenue
for growth. Yeah,
that's the whole point.
Yeah.
And courage.
So that's a great example, actually.
This in practice, I'll read out what it says here. So Stoics believe courage is not about reckless bravery, but about standing firm for what is right, enduring hardship, and taking action despite challenges. Example in daily life, we've given a few already, but standing up for your values, which I think is very, very important, even when it's difficult. Facing illness, loss, or failure with resilience, taking risks for the greater good, such as speaking the truth in the face of opposition. Has that ever happened to yourself? Well, I think you actually mentioned it, didn't you?
Did I?
You were talking about being in a situation where you had to make a decision earlier on.
Yeah, I didn't so much speak out then. That's what I'm working on.
That's a difficult one, I think, because me and you talk about this a lot, about the idea of maybe being misunderstood and then having the courage to be like, well, no, wait a second, I'm going to step into this so you kind of know. Like you talked about there a little bit about kind of men and women, and some people might get their wires crossed based off what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like just things like that I, for me personally, I'm talking about my own life here. As I mature and I understand myself and my values, etc., I want to stand firm with the courage and bravery to be like, no, this is what I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And the way you phrase that, I want to be that person. I do find myself sometimes falling back into, don't say this thing because people are going to be upset. But the more I observe people, and this is a great exercise for me to run this business, like, because I'm involved in this media world where everything is not as it seems. the more I observe that in other people, the more I realize, oh, okay, this is what it is. This is a fear. And I may have said this to you at some point. Most of the things I say on a podcast like this, more so my podcast, because I'm a little bit more prepared and intentional around my podcast, because I'm not the guest thinking I can fucking freewheel it. Most of the things I say, I'm pretty comfortable that they come from a very genuine place in me. So if I'm challenged on them, I have a good firm footing to stand on. I tend to try and not say things just because they're top of mind or because I read them or saw them. I'm pretty confident in most of them. I keep standing on the wire of your headphones there. So that gives me a bit of a more comfortable feeling expressing myself a little bit more. But I'm still, what I'm aware of and I have a bit of fear around is the lack of nuance online, because you could say something that could be misinterpreted, and there's a part of me that doesn't want to be misinterpreted. I don't want people to not like me or to get me the wrong way. But I suppose there's a certain level of courage required.
But there's
to lean into
also
that.
the beauty of doing 100 podcasts. If you were to listen to you 100 times over, which you've done 100 podcasts now.
Massive growth.
No, but yes, but also you could understand who you are and what you believe and what you actually mean.
But that's what I'm saying. Most people make a decision actively to not do that to suit their own biases.
Yeah.
So people might hear me, and I'm not a particularly controversial person. I'm a bad example for this, but if I was to say something, somebody will interpret that the way they want to interpret it to reinforce their own beliefs. It's a human thing. I do it, you do it, we all do it. But that could result in pushback against the thing that I've said or me as a person, and I could take that personally, and there's a lot of fear around that sometimes. So I think developing that element of it is something I do want to work on. It's just being way more comfortable expressing exactly what I believe, and being very clear in the fact that I'm saying this thing because I believe it, not because I'm trying to target somebody else or hurt somebody else. This is why I said it earlier on. I say it a bit facetiously as well. I don't really care about giving context. I'm saying this is a man and not as a woman and all this kind of stuff. If you choose to misinterpret that, it's kind of a you thing. But there's still an element of me going, I hope you don't misinterpret that, because I don't want you to not like me.
I think we all have that. And can I just quickly, James, go back to values? Because you mentioned values there.
Yeah, do you want me to call it again?
Yeah, just go give us that little quote there again. Because I think it's really important when it comes to courage.
Courage. Examples in daily life. Standing up for your values even when it's difficult.
Yeah. So I think I work with men in their 30s, 40s and 50s who are very successful. And oftentimes they are not living in alignment with their values because they're busy. They have a lot of responsibility. They don't have quote unquote time. And I think it requires courage to stop and go, I know I am this person. I know I'm not being the best dad. I know I'm not being the most present. And go, I'm going to actually work on this. I'm going to sit with this. I'm going to actually look at myself honestly and be like, what's the crack here? You know, and again, I'll go back to myself. I want to be that person. I want to lean into my values. I want to have the courage to stop and go, wait a second. Am I really living and working towards things that I truly value? Because in the past, I've done things that I didn't really want to do. And that, again, there was an element of I'm not being courageous. I'm allowing fear dictate what I do. And I want to keep leaning into.
That's a great shout. That's a great shout when it comes to courage. The courage to be introspective, because you're going to find things you know you are not going to like. You're 100% certain you will find things you do not like about yourself. The courage to look at them anyway, that's massive. That's a great show. That's a great show.
A very Stoic thing as well is to reflect on yourself.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Which is terrifying.
It is. And it's not easy to do because you've got to analyse where you're going wrong. You've got to point it out. You've got the courage to take action on it as well.
Yeah. And if you are a person in their 30s, 40s and 50s, you've got decades of these behaviors that you're going to have to acknowledge didn't serve you or don't serve you.
And then add responsibility.
And then
kids and work and life.
That's a great show. That's real courage. Yeah. Real courage, yeah.
Another courageous thing is always to reach out and ask for help from people, which I think men tend to struggle with. There's a quote from Marcus Aurelius here. I actually didn't necessarily understand it, so hopefully you can give me some feedback on it. And it finishes with a question mark.
Well, I am a Stoic scholar. Hit me.
Do not be ashamed of being helped, for it is your business to do your duty like a soldier in the assault on a town. How, then, is being lame? You cannot mount up on the battlements alone, but with the help of another, it is possible.
Can I read it?
You can read it, yeah?
I have my own ideas around that.
You go
because what kind of stands out there for me is the idea of alone and kind of that lone wolf, and particularly as a man, I'm going to find the answer. Whereas I think through maturity, through me living my life, particularly over the last 10 years, of me being quote unquote successful and having massive ups, downs, and in-betweens over those 10 years, is that I can't do it alone. Actually, nor do I want to do it alone. And actually the importance of being open and vulnerable to other people, to allow them see me honestly, as opposed to win the battle or get the success.
Because that's bravery. Like
100%.
reaching out to someone for help or being like, can you help me with this? I think it's a sign of courage. You're like, there's the fact that you're doing it.
Yeah. I think as a man, particularly when you do that, and because I've done it when I've had to do it, I've had no choice, and I've done it where I've had a choice. Like you're stripped, not figuratively, but naked.
Yeah,
and you have to be like, I don't know what to do here, and have someone else be like, I'm here to help you.
Yeah,
and you realize it's the best thing you can ever do.
Yeah, that makes sense. It took me a minute to do that, but it does make sense. Let's use it in the most literal sense, and then we can go into the more kind of figurative sense. Yeah. So in a literal sense, if I'm a soldier and my duty is to get up on the wall to defend the town, that's my duty, and I'm going to serve others by doing that. I'm literally protecting the town. If I'm lame, if I have a broken leg or whatever and I can't get up there, by not asking for help, I'm serving myself because I'm serving my ego, but I'm not serving anybody else.
Oh, okay.
So there's no real, it's actually more courageous of me to ask somebody to help me up on the wall, because then they're helping me do my duty, and my duty is what's going to serve others. And I know a lot of Stoicism about serving others, and I find a lot of
what do you do?
Real deep meaning from serving other people as well. And the more I lean into that, the more I learn, oh wow, I actually really get a lot of meaning from this. So in a figurative sense then, if I'm not feeling good, maybe as a father, this could be a good example for me then. If I'm not feeling good and I don't address that, if I have issues with my mental health and my psychology and I don't address that, I'm not going to serve my family. I'm not going to be a good father. I'm not going to be strong for them. I'm going to be short. I'm going to be argumentative. I'm going to be frustrated. I'm not going to be engaged with them. I'm not going to play with them. I'm not going to protect them or teach them or learn them or help them. But if I was to reach out to somebody for help and get them to help me with the issues I'm dealing with, I'm going to be a stronger, better father for my children. So by letting go of the ego and this idea that I'm only fucking a man if I'll do it myself, by actually reaching out for help and taking that courageous step, because it's a vulnerable thing to do. We're back to vulnerability. I end up being a stronger person. So I'm afraid, I do it anyway, which there's the courage, and then that allows me to be more of a servant to my family and be a stronger, in my view, a stronger man. So yeah, that's what it means to me there. So there is courage in asking for help, because you're going against your own ego.
And you're showing you're somewhat vulnerable as well.
And you're showing a level of vulnerability. Yeah.
Dan, beautifully done, because I was not.
I could be way off there, but that's my interpretation.
No, I think you've explained that beautifully. Yeah. That's exactly what that is. And that you've made me even understand that more. Like that's class. Because I think it's really important as well as men, as you age and as you become more successful, you realize this through experience. Like you literally realize it. So again, I'm 37, so I have 10 years ahead of you, James, in terms of the experience of life. And at 27, I wouldn't have had that understanding through my action steps and living life that I do now. So I think it's really important as we age, as we step into life, that quote and that understanding becomes even more important, because you just live life and you know that's fact.
And again, a bit cryptic for the listeners, so apologies, but you've done this 2 or 3 times in the last week.
All right.
The courage to ask for a bit of help.
Yeah.
To allow you to be the person you know you can
and
be.
Also, I know it's necessary in order for me to actually progress.
Because it does take courage when you think about it.
Yeah.
To ask for help, you're obviously struggling.
And you know what the joys of this is? Because I've done it myself instead of last week. People are, will definitely help you.
Yeah.
People want to help.
People are amazing.
People are amazing.
People are actually amazing.
I think we have a natural inclination to help each other as well. Or just to be there for each other, whatever.
Because we've all experienced what you are experiencing. Yeah. We've all gone through it. We all struggle. Life is not fucking easy.
That's actually a great quote, Dan. Now that you've explained,
it's a good one, isn't it? I like that. I hadn't heard that one before.
I did not understand that at all.
Yeah, it's class.
Yeah, I hadn't heard it before. That's a nice one.
Very good. Right, gents, we need to move on because we're gone for time. Justice. I think actually what I did really like about Ryan Holiday's talk, he said I don't know, he said the most important virtue, but this is definitely up there, which was justice. He mentioned it over and over again. Supporting the little guy. But anyway, the definition is treating others fairly with respect and contributing to the common good. It's all about the common good. Justice is about upholding ethical principles and fulfilling your role as a member of society. I'm going to put the examples in the in practice bit as well. So in practice, justice requires considering others' needs, promoting fairness, and acting with integrity in all relationships. And examples in daily life can be seen being honest and fair in your interactions, acting in the best interest of your community or group rather than selfishly, supporting others and standing against injustice. And then the quote from Marcus Aurelius once again is, the fruit of this life is a good character and acts for the common good. What do we think about justice?
Well, just that we're on number 3 here, and it's just mad that's how they're all interwoven.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
so
Like to have that justice, you need that discipline, you need that courage, and you need that awareness. You need to have action. You need to have made mistakes.
yeah. So I feel like if your own cup isn't full, how can you give to someone else? Like, how can you think about your community if you're not taking care of yourself? So it's like a byproduct of you taking care of yourself is like has this butterfly effect, and you can take care of your people in your inner circle, and then it just expands out and out and out.
Yeah, justice. I mean, I don't have much to say in this really because I in comparison, say the other two, but just for me, then with justice is like the idea of again maybe living life and being scorned by life and having mistakes and whatever. I think that's how I've understood justice better. That kind of makes sense. Only by going like, I've been wronged, I've done wrong, therefore I'm more aware of what a good man is, or again, what that integrity kind of means, or how I really want to live.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of, I keep going back to the same topics here kind of for each one, discipline, courage, and now this, is that giving yourself a level of compassion to learn. You know what I mean? And not having to have the answer, or again, thinking you're always going to be this perfect person or make the right choice each time. Because I think through the action of the good, bad, or indifferent choice is how you learn these principles more and more.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I get with justice.
What are you thinking, Dan?
I'm thinking justice, for me, feels like the acting part of the Stoicism.
Yeah.
Like the discipline and the courage are a little bit more the thinking parts and the awareness parts and the developing the skills parts. But the acting is how you manifest that.
Very well said.
I'm feeling. That's what I'm kind of feeling with it a little bit. Again, with you, this one is a bit more difficult.
Because it's not just you, it's with other people.
Yeah.
So how are you being fair and just to other people?
Sorry,
How do
just
you
really
demonstrate-
quickly, because I kind of agree with you, but is that not the same for courage and discipline? As well.
Yeah. But like, I think what I wanted to say while you're speaking there is I agree. Like this whole Stoic philosophy is just a framework. This was invented by other humans. It's a framework for us to organize our thoughts around this thing. So all of these are actions, all of these are thoughts, all of these are helping steer us towards becoming a better version of ourselves. The whole idea behind this. So all these words like justice and courage and temperance and discipline and all this, it's just a framework.
Of course.
I don't think we need to get too hung up on that. But for me, this feels like how does this manifest in the world outside of me? Because I have all these, I'm doing my daily Stoic, I'm doing my journal, I'm doing my breathwork, and I'm in this little bubble of me becoming this person. But how does that manifest in your family? And how does that manifest in the world?
How does that impact other people?
And how does that impact other people? So we are very privileged
to
be sitting here having a podcast talking about this, going to beautiful restaurants and not that we're living the high life at all, but going to philosophies, reading our books, doing our podcasts and stuff like that. How do we then take that, all that intellectual property we've now developed, and impact
the world,
the person that we meet when we go out here, my kids when we go home, the person who's going to cut us off in traffic when we're driving back? How do we take this stuff?
How do you respond to situations?
And respond to situations or interact with stimulus? This idea of right and wrong, good and evil, justice and injustice. Injustices for me are situations where people are being taken advantage of. Usually through no fault of their own, really. And you can point to a million injustices going on right now in the world, and the world is full of injustices. So this is a difficult topic, right? This one gets a lot of pushback because of different worldviews. Very easy for me to say a lot of things I'm going to say, but I don't believe necessarily it's our responsibility to involve ourselves in every injustice in the world, because I think that disempowers us a little bit. I think that stops us focusing on the things we can actually have an impact on. So yes, there's loads of things going on in the world now which I think are unjust. Do I think I should spend my time on Instagram writing articles and getting pissed off and allowing that to impact the injustices I see right in front of me, which is sometimes I'm a shit dad because I'm tired and pissed off? That's a fucking injustice to my kids.
Yeah.
I need to sort that one out first.
And go back to the Stoic philosophy is what you're talking about there. What's actually in your control right now? So that, like, again, and you already talked about it, there's a level of truth and honesty with yourself, because you mentioned integrity for justice. I think it's really important for a man, because the decisions you make now, you know. Like, you can pretend to the world in terms of justice, or again, like you said, maybe working on this big goal, or again, this big passion thing that you think I can affect, but maybe deep down you're not, but just to get some accolades or be told you're a great lad.
And a lot of the time there's a lack of discipline, not taking care of your own business because you're so busy campaigning for somebody else's
Jordan
business.
Peterson always talk this, get your own house in order.
Clean your fucking room, get your house in order before you go and try and change the world. And it sounds insensitive, but for me, it's actually a great foundation to help more people. It's a way to get your own stuff sorted so you can have more of an impact. And you have to start close to home. You have to start with the people around you. I call myself on this yesterday all the time. I come in here and have these brilliant fucking discussions. And then I go home and I'm a cunt. I go home and I'm tired, or I stop at jail, or we have a stupid fucking fight, or I'm not present with the kids. And I'm like, hold on, you are an absolute complete moron here. You're getting this totally backwards, going out professing this stuff to the world in these podcasts, and then going home and being an absolute ball sack. So let's reverse that. Start close to home. The people closest to you. It starts with you.
Yeah.
And you build the courage and the discipline, the standards, and the physical.
And
body.
then people around you are the people you can have the greatest impact on.
Exactly.
I kind of liked what you said there, Dan. Like you could go home, you could watch the news, you could feel all this injustice in the world, but your actions are not going to change that situation necessarily, because it's not relative to your own life.
Sometimes this sounds judgmental. I think that's a fucking cop out.
It is a cop out.
To go and campaign for country A and country B and country C that are absolutely injustice. Don't disagree with that at all. But it means you're not looking at yourself. It means you're not doing the really courageous thing of looking inwards. And that's a very, very privileged thing to say, because we have the opportunity to sit and look in. We're not in these countries that have bombs dropping on us all the time. But this is where we are. Yeah. This is where we are right now.
I think it's really important as well, because you mentioned there about you do your own thing, because I think it's really important that once you start to do your own thing, you're in a position to help the community that's around you. Exactly. And as a result, you're in a position to help the world that's around that. So we're not just saying look after your own thing and that's it. By looking after your own thing, you're now in a position to have an impact in the community. You're then in a position to have a worldwide impact of these bigger topics now that we're talking about.
And as we can see at the moment, sorry, I'm rambling on this one because I'm quite passionate about it. It turns out I actually have a lot to say on justice. Different worldviews have different views of what justice looks like. So all of these different sides of different conversations arguing with each other both believe they're on the side of what's just and right. But in my personal belief, I don't think a lot of the people who are screaming the loudest have taken the time to actually figure out what just means to them. Or they're using a very convenient tagline or set of standards that they've outsourced from somewhere else, and it's not actually coming from what they believe or who they are. Because I believe if a lot of human beings sat down and reflected and figured out the type of person they actually wanted to be, we wouldn't have a lot of this kind of fighting, this shouting and screaming and arguing over all these different causes. And we'd have a certain level of kind of congruence on them.
Because that wouldn't be good for the
nuanced conversation. Like,
what's nuanced conversation? Like, but yeah, that's what I think about justice and injustice. And then how I see it in my own life, I've stopped trying to identify injustice as being done to me, because in most cases there's no injustice being done to me at all. It's myself, it's my head. And I've started trying to identify areas where I am demonstrating injustices, for example, towards my kids. I know that sounds weird, but it's not just for me to say one thing in here and talk about this thing and then go home and act in a different way. That's an injustice against my kids, because it's going to lead to a worse life for them, not a better life. So I'm trying to look at all the areas in my life. Trying is the key word here. To look at areas in my life where there are injustices that I am involved in directly. What am I doing to proliferate this injustice? And how do I adapt and change and develop more courage or more discipline, or raise my standards, develop more awareness to change that?
Yeah. So justice is the impact you have on other people. And,
I think it's the manifestation of all these things in the world.
What a sort of person you show. But I love that. I absolutely love it.
I think.
We're going to move on. Probably the most difficult one is wisdom. And a lot of Stoic philosophy is wisdom, because when you hear these quotes, you're like, especially as men, I think, and women as well, they have this context. You get these aha moments. So you hear a quote, you're like, of course that's how it is. You know what I mean? How else would it be? But anyway, wisdom. Definition, right? So it's the ability to discern what is right and true, and to make decisions in alignment with reason and virtue. How this is seen in practice. So wisdom is the foundation of all other virtues, guiding your actions and ensuring that they are ethical and well thought out. Examples in daily life: taking time to reflect before making decisions, learning from experience and seeking knowledge to improve yourself. And lastly, balancing competing priorities with clarity and rationality. And the quote, once again from Marcus Aurelius, is if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. What do we think about wisdom?
Do you reckon somebody just made up all this stuff about Marcus Aurelius that he wrote these in his diaries and never meant us to read them? I say some fella sitting there saying,
if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Jeez, how simple that is as well.
Yeah, but I think it's the whole point, going back to obviously Stoicism as well, and obviously the self-help books and everything that we read, and like, all of these self-help things are the same messages that we just wrap in our own words or new ways, but the same message always comes up of all these things because it is so simple. I think we're trying to complicate it because it's difficult.
Do you know my favorite quote around wisdom? Knowledge is knowing a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad.
Beautifully said that.
Yeah.
Beautifully
Did you ever hear that one?
No.
I did, yeah.
So, actually, I
Give us in context. Go on. What does that mean?
So for me, what that means is knowledge is possessing the information, but wisdom is understanding how that information is applicable in the real world.
Applicable, that's the word.
Yeah. So kind of like the last point a little bit, it's linked in there.
They're all interwoven.
There, yeah. Again, it's just this framework for helping us understand things. But knowledge is the self-help, reading all the books, all that kind of stuff. Wisdom is really understanding what this piece of knowledge means from the context of life and real world applications. And wisdom, I think there's a certain level of experience required for wisdom.
There's also a certain level of action. There's a certain level of, if you don't mind me kind of putting in here.
No, go, please.
Because I the last couple of months with my psychedelic journeys I've been on, have been really allowed me to understand wisdom from a very visceral thing. So knowledge being this very, like I said, heady thing. You have a knowing, you read it, you to some degree even consciously understand it. Wisdom is this nervous system download. You literally embody this message. It becomes part of you. It's not even a question of, what do I do? You know in your being what the right thing, what you should do. It doesn't mean that you necessarily do it, but you know. And that's where, again, you bullshitting yourself of not doing this thing because you know you have the wisdom. You've accepted it at a very nervous system, visceral level. I think it's really important because then you can bullshit other people. But you have this wisdom and you can never bullshit yourself.
I like what you said there, embody it. Like it's that you wrapped into your nervous system, applying these Stoic principles and
it becomes you.
It becomes you.
And that's the importance of making change, as we all know. You got to shift your identity. Again, like all of us here, we are people who train. We don't even question it. You're saying, why don't people train? Because they haven't got that identity of, I literally do. If I don't train, me personally, I'm not me. Who the fuck am I? I'm someone who trains. So again, I have embodied that wisdom of that physical practice. It's just there. From number one, me doing it, and then literally me embodying it, getting the result, having the knowledge, and my nervous system going like, yeah, this is part of you now. And I think that's the importance of wisdom. It's like, you don't even have to explain. I can't even explain it to you. It's like
it's known. And I think actually Ryan Holiday said on the night, he'd been writing a book about wisdom for the past 6 years and still did not have a definition of what it was.
That's brilliant, yeah.
But I kind of like what you said there. If you embody or you build it into yourself, it's just you act it out, but it's very hard to actually put some.
But that's why it's hard to put the words, I think, because it's so individual. It's such a real thing of you as opposed it is. Because you just are. What the fuck are you? Who are you? What? I don't know. You know. And you can even put words to it, but it doesn't do it justice because I'm me. I embody what I embody.
So it's wisdom undefined.
Well, Ryan Holiday did say that. And 6 years of writing a book. And he can't even give a definition.
I think there is a visceral element to it. There's a knowing a thing and an understanding a thing. And wisdom will be more understanding on a deeper, like you're talking about a nervous system level.
Well, understanding, it's also something called inner standing.
Inner standing.
So genuinely,
you spend too much time in shamanic circles.
Yeah, I have. But the idea again with inner standing, so go back to it, is that again, it's in you, it's part of you. So get understanding can almost be heady, can be in your brain, can be that knowledge, and that inner standing is like you've accepted this.
I like that.
I like that as well, and I think wisdom is like everyone. I think is inherently wise to some degree. And it's like expressing it in whatever form it might be. But to put a definition on it, I think is very difficult. But then I'd say like the Stoics are very wise. Like what they come out with
aren't aren't we only wise through the application and the curve? All these things that we're not too sure because we don't know until we do know. And the only way of knowing is oftentimes moving into the unknown, moving into the uncertainty, having the experience, making mistakes.
So well, we could look at some simple things. You don't get wise children, you get wise old people.
Yeah.
That's a wise old lady. That's a wise old man. So there's probably an element of experience in there. You need to have a level of experience. You need to have been around the block a few times. You need to have seen how the pieces fit together. As you're a kid, you have all the pieces. As an adult, you've seen the pieces fit together in multiple different combinations. So you have more of an understanding or a wisdom around that maybe. Yeah, that's actually quite hard to understand. What if you Google wisdom, what do you get?
That's a good question.
You can continue chatting there.
I didn't actually realize that Ryan Holiday until he said it on the night that he was writing a book on wisdom because it's fucking brilliant. Like that makes so much sense of why it would take him 6 years to do it because it's such a depth to the actual thing.
Oh, here we go. Look, we could have just Googled it, lads, and answered the question. From the Oxford Dictionary, the quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment.
I think experience is the most important element. That's why people that are elderly tend to be wise.
But again, even that, I don't think it does it justice. That doesn't do it justice in terms of like, because again, we've all experienced, people listen to this and we've experienced wisdom and things. So I always say this analogy or example. Did you ever see a quote, a mundane quote, any of them? So I actually
Hang in there, baby.
I used one of, it's okay not to be okay. The mental health quote. Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
I remember last year feeling like shit, looking at that quote and going, oh, fuck. I know exactly what that means. Now, I've seen that quote hundreds, if not thousands of times. You hear it all the time, constantly.
Yeah.
But actually, I was feeling so shit. Obviously, to some degree, I accepted and embodied this message and was like, all right. But I know that quote constantly. But it was just, and there's so many quotes that I see, or so many things you're like, oh, I actually get that. And you've seen it time and time again. Again, there's a level of wisdom and knowing there and understanding that I can't really explain what the fuck it is, but it's a download. It's a visceral thing going, all right.
And that only came through experience.
I think so. It only through the action, through the experience, through the question, the reflection, through life.
Yeah.
Again, that wise old woman, that wise old man is only so wise from living, and then you can learn backwards. You don't learn in the living. You live it and you go, oh, that's what it was.
Yeah. I love it. Right, gents, we're getting through this. We're nearly
There's
there.
a nice podcast called Modern Wisdom. Did you ever hear that one?
I love it. Have you ever heard of the let them theory? The Stoic perspective. Basically, it's all about kind of emotional control and letting go of things that no longer serve you. Anyway, I'm going to break through it and then I want your feedback down.
Break it down.
I'll break it down, right? So the core idea is to focus only on what you can control and let go of what you cannot. This aligns with Stoic teachings that emphasize accepting the natural flow of life. Practical application. If someone disrespects you, let them. Don't try to control their behavior. Don't let them distract you too much either. If your boss fires you, let them. Focus on how you will respond, not their decision. If a partner wants to leave, let them. Respect their choice and avoid pleading or resisting. So key principles: stop wasting time and energy on things outside of your control. Release stress by accepting situations for what they are rather than fighting against reality. And also the freedom to choose. Recognize that everyone has the right to make their own decisions and that no one is obliged to act in a way that aligns with your expectation. And the outcome of this is by embracing the let them mindset. You gain inner peace, you reduce stress, and you focus on your own actions and growth. What do you make of the let them theory?
It's kind of like live and let live, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I find a lot of these Stoic principles challenging because, like you touched on it there, like your immediate reaction was, "Oh, let them fucking push too much now."
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I like. There was one of the in the Daily Stoic, you do it every day. Obviously, one of the quotes the other day came up and it was similar enough to that. Like let people do what they will, even if it impacts you. And I was like, Jesus, fucking don't know about that now. You don't want to, people walking all over you, pushing you around, or whatever. So I think there's a happy middle ground between most. I like that the part of the description there. You can't control what they do or why they did it, but you can control how you react to it. So if you respond or react in a really bad way or an emotional way, you're still giving them control, or you're giving what they did control. So your way of asserting control over the situation is how you respond, how you decide to respond. I think decide is the key word for me there. So like you could march into the room and as my boss and say, "You're fucking fired." I can't control that decision for you. I could beg and plead. I could get angry. I could throw something at you. I could throw a dig. I could fucking tackle it to the ground. I could do all these different things. But my power is, okay, decide how I would like to respond in this situation here. My impulse, that we talked about earlier, is probably to fucking knock the head off him or to cry or to scream or to something like that. But I'm in control of my decision, and that takes back the power. Okay, he has made this decision for some reason. I can move on. Easier said than done, because in a lot of these situations, you immediately get emotional.
But it's a test. It's a test of your character.
Yeah, it's a test. And it's
Do you have control over yourself?
How much work have you done to develop that control, that skill that we talked about earlier on? Like, have you built the skill? And in a lot of cases, the answer is no. So, yeah, it's a difficult one. Let them. Because again, oftentimes we see people doing things we don't agree with, and we feel an injustice has been done to us or to someone else. We want to involve ourselves and react in a certain way. So that's a hard one for me. Yeah, I get conflicted on that one sometimes.
It is about emotional control, though.
Yeah, well, I think you said control there, because I think that's what I got from that. Because again, go back to the fundamental principle of Stoicism: what's in your control. So I think that quote is perfect in the sense of like you want to let other people be because they're not in your control. So don't be ruled by their emotion or their action or something like that. So it's not that they have to, that they're going to control you. You just go, you let them do what they do. And then you mentioned the response. And that to me straight away was responsibility. What's your response? And that's the ability. The ability is to respond in a certain way. So that's in my control constantly. And then this is obviously why it's difficult practicing these principles because of life. Yeah. But I think you just go back to this fundamentally, it's responsibility, responding and the ability you have to do that. Yeah. It's a skill. We can stop. How do I want to respond? Will I be controlled? Let it go. Let them. Let it because go. None of that is in your control. Only these two things here. And if you break this philosophy down, that's why I think it's so good. It's so simple. It's really difficult to do, but the actual practice of what's in my control, how will I respond? Yeah. That's pretty much what Stoicism is.
And that's it.
Yeah. I think I zeroed in really quickly on the most acute situations there. If someone gets in your face, how do you respond? But actually, most of my life, I talk about Jill, my partner, all the time about this. Most of the time, I actually don't involve myself in what other people say or think or do around me. And it's not that I don't care, because I do care. Because sometimes I don't care what they think. I do care what people think. But what they do and how they do it is actually none of my business. And I find myself having this conversation really regularly with Jill if she's upset about something. And I don't undermine her feelings and emotions. She's upset in a moment. But I'm like, that person has this whole other world that they're living in. And they're not thinking about you at all. Even when they said that thing to you or about you, it wasn't to you or about you. It was about them. They've said this thing that has upset you, but it's really about them. And I remember the other day, she actually came home and she's like, that clicked a little bit with me. Is it? It's nothing to do with me. Yeah. I was like, 100%. We tell ourselves this whole story because this person was maybe in a bad mood. Maybe they've broken up with their partner. Maybe they didn't eat well. Maybe they don't have any discipline or courage and are spraying emotions all over the place. And you're taking all that on board and you're letting them dictate who you are. And I actually have found over the last couple of years, maybe it's coming a bit older. Man, I rarely think about, not never, but rarely think about what other people are thinking about me or things they've said, or if people say something that could be interpreted in a negative way, I choose to not interpret it in a negative way. And I force them to say something again, and they never do. Yeah. So in my head, I'm like, if they really meant that in a negative way, they'll say it again, because I'm not going to respond the way they thought. And they never do. So I'm like, oh, maybe they didn't mean it that way.
And the thing is as well, we choose if we're offended or not. Someone says something to you, like,
oh, James, you just got cancelled.
Just got cancelled. But the thing is like, no one can offend you. Like, you have that control over yourself. Someone could say something to you, like, what about, like,
I was only watching
Ricky
Gervais on The Overlap with the lads of football. And obviously he's someone who says jokes, says the exact same thing. I didn't offend you. You chose to take offense.
You choose to be offended.
But again, go back to all this then, the responsibility. So you're
what if I said something racially derogative?
No, again, there's obviously, but again, go back to what you mentioned before, the intention. Are you intentionally trying to be racist? Are you trying to hurt somebody? That's different than making a joke that, again, is literally a joke or in a context where I'm a comedic actor or whatever. Yeah. So again, I think context and nuance and...
You could say something offensive.
Intention.
But people choose, even if it's racist or sexist or whatever it might be, it's like they still... Even if you meant in bad way, you still choose how that will affect you on an emotional level.
Yeah.
I think the big thing about Stoicism is you're going to feel these negative emotions. You just don't give in to them. You don't act them out. You don't play on the emotion. Because I think as soon as you play an emotion, you've given all your power over to someone else. They are like, I said something, he reacted this way, I got him.
And even think about cancel culture, because this is madness. People are being done for what they said 20 years ago in a context that was said was absolutely fine. And then people are going, yeah, but it's not fine now, man. Yeah, okay, but I mean, like, it's just madness. It's madness that you're going to have to relax. It is crazy.
Absolutely crazy.
So all of a sudden, then, if you don't have that control of yourself and kind of what you do in this moment,
the implications would be massive.
But you're powerless then. You have nothing in life. You know what I mean? So again, all we do have is that response and that ability. We can improve that ability and we can just get very clear of the awareness and the response you want to have.
Yeah.
And that's all.
But that's kind of bulletproof.
I think there's a great quote from, mindset, I don't know which...
You ripped the piss out of me?
No. I'm agreeing. I know it's very hard to tell sometimes because I rip the piss out of you a lot.
I was going to say, there's a quote from one of the Stoics. He says, be tolerant with yourself. No, sorry, be strict with yourself and tolerant with others.
Yeah.
That's just a great way to be. Just, that's how it should be. Well, how I want to finish this is on a personal philosophy note. Because obviously, Stoicism is all based on philosophy. But just an open question to you two men. Is there any personal philosophies that you kind of operate or navigate yourself towards, or that help you operate through life? Personal philosophies. It's a bit of a difficult question, isn't it?
It's the only reason it's a difficult question is because it's a work in progress. Like it's a serious under construction. There's massive fucking hard hats.
Maybe I could phrase it like what you do to live a better life or live
this.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah.
Conversations like
100%.
this. Trying to find people like yourselves who'll hold me accountable and let me know. Reflecting whenever possible, really bad at that. Trying to get better at reflecting and identifying for myself. Oh, that is not the type of person you want to be. You did a version of reflection today. You shared this thing with us, this story. You could have made a decision, made this decision. That's a great reflection. Just a lot of things I say this all the time. I've said on this podcast that I haven't actually ever sat down and talked about before or thought about before. So I do this because I know a lot of the times this stuff comes out of me. Trying to listen to feedback from people I respect, like Jill, my parents, my friends, but being very discerning with that feedback as well. And using resources like I've really leaned on the Daily Stoic like that. It just seems to me to be a good resource. There's loads of information. There's a library full of them over there. There's books everywhere. There's podcasts everywhere. But I found myself continuously coming back to the teachings of these people, even if they are fake and it's all a conspiracy. But coming back to this, because for me the principle is being a better version of myself and giving myself space to decide what that looks like. So I don't know if I have a personal philosophy. There's certain things I've picked up on, like honesty. I picked up that from Peterson straight away. And the reason I picked up on it straight away is because I wasn't a liar, but I was not a completely honest person. I would tell little white lies. I told you before, like with clients, if I missed a deadline with a client, I'd say, oh, my fucking my dog ate my homework or whatever. Like, and then I realized that's a small white lie, doesn't hurt anybody.
And it chips away at you as well.
But it does chip away.
Yeah.
And I noticed myself that chips away. And I can't point to any big space in my life where I lied about something really important. But that's only one step away if I'm lying about small things like this. So like being honest, I try and really identify areas where I can be honest. That's a big thing of mine. If I can see it and acknowledge it, two things happen. I action on it or I develop a huge amount of fear around acting on it. And then I have a challenge to be courageous. So there's all these different learnings in there. So yeah, my philosophy is, my personal philosophy, I don't have anything nice and fucking quotable you can hang on a wall that I look at every day. But that's what I try and do. And put myself in situations where I'm challenged, reflect as much as I possibly can, look for guidance and support, and use resources like this.
Very Stoic like that.
Yeah.
Very Stoic like I like it. Mr. O'Loughlin.
I'm actually getting clear on my personal philosophy over the last couple of years. And I think a big thing for me is intention.
Oh, fair. See, I should let him go first.
Yeah, but genuinely though, because like even us on this podcast, like, we're talking about all these fucking grand ideas and all the wisdom and courage, and I'm giving you examples of how I've fucking leaned in and all that. But like, as you mentioned, I'm in the building site here. I'm doing my fucking best. I make mistakes constantly. But like underlying all of that, so this episode, I have intention of wanting to do all of these things that we're talking about. Even I help clients. I literally have changed lives left, right and centre, literally changed their lives, very successful men, etc. But that doesn't mean I have all the answers and I do everything right. But I have the intention of, I can help you here. I want to live this way. I want to be a better father. I want to keep learning, etc. So like my personal philosophy is just getting clearer of like even alcohol, because you were a big driver of me understanding this.
Because I was a big drinker.
A big driver but the intention behind my drinking. I thought, alcohol's good or bad. Well, no. Actually, just what is the intention? Like, is it for an experience? Is it for a connection? Is it just ruling you? You're getting pissed and you're blacking out. And again, I'm going to make mistakes, not necessarily with alcohol anymore, but in other areas of my life. But the intention, I am trying to be better. I'm trying to live more value of who I am and what I'm doing. That's a big thing for me.
I love it. So I think it's all based on betterment of yourself, isn't it?
What about you, James?
Yeah, I was thinking of this, and I actually went a bit deep with it. But what I'm trying to do, my own kind of personal philosophy, Dan, is be a greater expression of love in the world, trying to give and receive more love into the world, because love is this universal language. And I'm on a bit of a love buzz at the moment, but it's just trying to, like, with any person I meet, how can I almost improve the interaction and make them feel warmth and love from myself, because it all just operates from ourselves and the people that we meet and our community.
What does that look like literally? Are you trying to intentionally give love? Are you trying to give it?
It's not a forceful thing.
Yeah.
It's like
less tea or more tea.
It's all tea, Dan. It's all tea.
Well, what's that mean genuinely, day to day? Like, what does that look like?
So when I'm with someone, I'm present with them. That's almost like a form of love, or just something as simple as be very complimentary, but in a genuine sense as well. Or how else would I express it? That's a good question, Brian. You're kind of catching me out here a small bit. I think presence being one element.
Can I give you something? Because I get this off you. I hang around with you and we train and we do everything. there's an element of you holding space for me because again, you're emitting that love. You're very clear of who you are. You got a great level of awareness that when I'm around you, I'm more of myself.
I like to make people feel loved.
Yeah.
Not necessarily by acting does come into it, but by just, they can feel it from me. That's the intention I go in with. That I'm not looking for love off someone, but I want to give it to them because it's such a beautiful feeling when we give it. And also when you receive it, it's even better. Yeah. But it's a universal thing. It's just trying to be a greater expression of love.
And is this something that you've been like practicing and trying to get better at?
This,
or just doing?
This doing definitely, but it only dawned on me, I think, in the last month. I was just writing one day and I just went down a rabbit hole and I was like, what are you trying to do when you meet people? Like, what energy are you? Because we all feel energy off each other. We were talking about this earlier on. It's like everything's just an energy transference. All the time, we're giving each other energy. It's gone back and forth. Without even opening your mouth, you can feel someone else's energy. And we have an intuition that just picks up on it. But when someone is around me, I want to make them feel at peace and feel loved. And that could come with just giving them your attention, which I think is so crucial. And connection. I feel love in this podcast. I've love for both you men, as you know.
Right back at you.
But it is a beautiful thing. And also, I suppose the only thing I would disagree with the old ancient Greeks is what they say. The Romans and the Greeks say that the seed of all wisdom comes in the mind. But the Celts say that the seed of all wisdom comes from the heart. And the heart is the most magnetic part of your being. So it's all about love. It's all about love. Just a quote from, I actually didn't write down who it was from, but without love, it says, without love, we perish. Love is much more than an emotion. It's essential for individual and collective survival. You can't survive without love, basically.
All you need is love.
All you need is love.
Oh, fucking, it's about that time of year, boys. Love Actually. Going to watch it for the 9,000th time. That's like fucking really old now.
Yeah.
Love Actually. Yeah.
That's how it's mental, how we're getting older constantly. But that's a nice way to finish off, James, I think, in terms of that love, because I think, go back to say my intention, or even everything we're talking about here,
21 years
like
old.
we don't have all the answers, but emitting that frequency or energy of love is what we're all looking for, I think.
We
deep
are.
down. You know what I mean? Whether that's with other people or ourselves, I think that's ultimately what it is.
Love and connection, yeah.
Love and connection, yeah. I got it in this podcast anyway. Gents, if anyone is looking to get in contact or learn more about yourselves, where to go? Dan.
Fuck off.
Brian _ insert name here.
M101.
M101. If anybody wants to reach out, yeah.
They know where to get us.
They do. We'll put it in the Instagram. It's the Primal page there. Right. Send me an email, talk to James, whatever, if anyone would like to have a conversation.
It'll be all linked below anyway.
Yeah.
But gents, thank you very much for this once again. It's
Thank
been a
you,
pleasure.
sir.
Always, thank you so much for having us on. Looking forward to number 7.
Number 7.
I'll get
Onwards.
number 4 for them, will I?
You will indeed. Onwards and upwards.
Onwards
Take care.
and upwards. Thank you, James.
Thank you.